will be learning about layers and how to properly organize your model so that it's very efficient in terms of navigation and selecting different objects and elements within that layer, and understanding the properties of what goes on a layer. So let me share my screen. Yeah, hope you guys are having a good semester back, even though you're not really back, you're just at home probably on your screens. Anyway, okay, so yeah, my name is Eric. I am the design software specialist. I also went to school here, so I know what you guys are going through and types of projects and difficulties that'll arise. So we have sessions every day from 3 to 5, which I think you have a link in one of your emails from Leo that you could join in on a Zoom call, and we could assist you with any of your conflicts that are related to the design software for Rhino, Revit, Adobe Suite, etc. So that's available from 3 to 5 every day, business days. Okay, I have here a model which I made quickly on Rhino. It's a really dingy factory kind of setting thing, and I made it all on one layer. So from the get-go, this isn't good because I'm gonna have difficulty selecting my elements very easily. I'm gonna have to sift through them. If I want all my columns, then I'm gonna have to select them one by one. It's not good. So there's several ways to organize your layers. You could do it by material, you could do it by construction, so whether you want beams, columns, floor, roof, doors, etc. So you just have to determine what's the easiest way for you to select your objects and organize it. I'm going to do it by building elements. So here, right at the top, is here's your layers panel, which should be in the midst of your properties, rendering, materials, libraries in Rhino 6. And by selecting this page up at the corner, you're gonna create a new layer. I'll just start creating a bunch, right? And renaming them by double clicking. This one will be my columns. This one will be my beams. And the example that I sent on the email attachment is different from this because I want you guys to kind of determine how you are going to organize that house. So this will just be a learning exercise. Floor, roof. What else do I got? I got doors, walls, exterior walls actually, so that might be helpful. Interior walls. Aight. And the check mark and bolded title will identify that this is the active layer. So if I were to make a new object and this is active, then my object will be indoors. If I click the object and click the properties panel, you'll see that the layer is in fact doors. But I don't want that. Delete. Okay. Here, basically showing or hiding your layer. Right now, it doesn't do anything because I don't have anything in these layers. So once I start to place my objects in these, then it'll be more apparent. You can lock them, which is useful. So if okay, I'll get to that later. To switch an object into a specific layer, you could do one of two things. I will move this to the roof layer by typing change layer, pressing enter, and choosing it from there. I will put it onto roof. Okay. Or I can select the object And right here at the bottom bar, we have also an easy access to the types of layers that we have. And I'm going to put this on exterior wall. Now, when we get to this little section, that's the color. And I love this because you could start to make your building look like a building. If you have wood beams, make it a brown color. If you got concrete, make it like a light gray or steel. So this is really helpful in both starting to paint a picture of what the architecture is, but also identifying really easily what the elements are. So here I'm gonna have my columns. It's gonna be timber construction, so I'll make it kind of this brown. Also my beams, but to differentiate it, I'll probably make it a little bit redder. Something like that. My floor will be a nice concrete gray, and my roof will be some sort of steel, darker. And you're starting to see that now these changes are applying to the layers. Exterior wall is going to be pretty purple. And then my interior walls will be up an amazing aquamarine. Right. Let's continue organizing this. Select all my exterior walls and hold shift in order to add to the selection. Hit control if you want to deselect it. Okay, so I'm gonna change this to exterior walls. Now that that's done, I'm going to hide it so that I can easily select the other items. Exterior walls will be turned off. And I have my roof, so that can be turned off too. We have the floor now. I'll change this to gray. Turn this off. Now select the beams. I think you guys know this already, but dragging from right to left will select everything that's within the box, and dragging left to right will select only the objects that are entirely in the box. So my beams aren't selected. This one I want to move to. Now I could hide my beams. I have my interior walls now. I'll do change layer. And what's nice about change layer is that you get the options to create a new one on the fly. So if you know you don't have a layer already, just do this command and create one. And I'll say this is, and I'll just call this interior wall again. Okay, hide that. Now it's getting pretty easy to select everything. Click the doors. Go to, oh, I didn't click doors. Okay, I'll put in my interior walls and just change the name because I already have an interior walls too. Change this name. Great. Lastly, columns. Let me hide these items. Guess what? It's just a simple selection now. Okay, now that everything's organized, if I were to go to select the default and delete it, there shouldn't be a problem. Great. Now that everything's organized, we can navigate through our building in a simple manner. I want to edit the interior walls, so I'll just deselect everything. But then I also want the columns to, show. So instead, I'll change my active layer to interior walls by double clicking it, and everything here I want to remain, so I'll lock these instead. So now if I were to select, guess what? Your interior walls are the only things that you could click on, which is great. So I want to extend this wall specifically to here, which is not part of the tutorial. But I don't know why I'm thinking I'm making something. All right, and if we further continue on in the layers panel, we have the materials which we can apply for rendering. I don't have any on at the moment, but it'll bring us to this pop-up panel where you can apply your vismats or JPEGs of, say, a wood texture onto it, and it'll apply directly onto the layer. You don't have to worry about opening up the render panel here and going to V-Ray or Enscape. I know some of you will be using this here. So that's another quick way of just applying it to something you know will be wood. Line types and print widths. So these are good if you're drafting in Rhino, which I don't necessarily advise, but if you're doing it, it's good to know that you could have the option to create different line types and line widths when you print, kind of like AutoCAD. But they only apply to curves, lines, polylines. You can't do this for your poly surfaces and extrusions. So I'll do a line, for example, here. And my line is automatically in interior walls because that's the active layer. If I click continue line type, I could change it to dashed, for example. Okay, but it's a bit small. It's quite small, actually. Small, so small that you can't really see it from like a full plan. So if that were to happen, you can go to the top, what are these called? Top panel, click tools, go right down to options. You'll have a dialog box that opens and then option for line types is available. And usually this is because your line type scale is at 1 and because your lines are like 2 millimeters and 2 millimeter space, it's not going to show. So a global change you can do is to change this value to say 300 or 400. Or you can adjust each line type by changing their actual value. So this could be 200 millimeters by 200 millimeter space. So I instead just want to do a global change for a quick thing. And yep, now you'll notice that it's almost appropriately sized. It's a bit bigger than what I wanted, but now you know how to change it. Am I getting questions in the chat? Okay. Provide Rhino like Adobe. Okay, these are unrelated to the session, so I'll let y'all talk. Okay. And lastly, print width just determines the thickness of your line weight. And if we go to number 2, this won't show up in the model display, but when you go to your print setting, File, Print, you'll see that that's quite bold now. And if I were to close this, change my print width to something like 0.25, okay. Let's go to File and Print again. It's a lot thinner. So if you are drafting in Rhino, I would say make sure you create a good set of different layers that have different line widths. Not necessarily objects, because that's more of a modeling type of organization. I could do the layer name by the print width. So I could do 0.5, line 0.25, change that to there, and so on, so that you have basically your drafting layers, but also your modeling layers. Let's say you have a column. Okay, I'll do just this one also. lesson real quick, and then I'll open the Zoom to questions. But you could also do sublayers, which if you're organizing by material is very useful, because you could have wood sheathing, wood windows, wood, what else? Wood gables, wood items. And you could create your sublayers underneath that so that you can identify what the object is within that material. So for example, I'll create this as wood, and I'll create a few sublayers. So the thing is, when you create a sublayer, you have to click on the parent layer first in order for it to apply to it. Otherwise, if you continue selecting sublayer, since this is selected, you're going to create a sublayer of the sublayer. So you kind of have to manually click on the parent layer first, sublayer, and do that. So I'll say windows, doors, for example. What else we got? Stairs, all of them. And you'll notice that the properties aren't matching what I have with my parent layer. I have this color. Let's pretend I had my dash dotted line type and my print width of 0.3. These didn't apply. So an easy way to match these is by selecting all the sublayers that you want, either by holding Control and clicking them individually, or clicking them as a set by holding Shift. There you go. Right-clicking them and selecting Match Properties. So you're going to select the parent layer that you want the properties applied to it. And now everything should follow as suit. Let's see, what else is there on here? Yeah, there's so many options when you right-click. So I advise when you learn a new program, just kind of right-click on everything, because there'll be something useful that you could see. So here I can select all of these actually, right-click, and with this command, the second command, set properties, I could globally change these layers so that they have all the same property type for, say, material. No, not material. I'll do color. So I can make them this dutty green. Yeah. So that's a simple way to do things very quickly. And here, again, you could select the layer, right-click it, and select objects, and I'll have all my columns selected. So if you were to break these columns into different tiers, say this is grid 1, this is grid 2, this is grid 3, and you make sublayers for those. When you select the sublayer, right-click it and do select objects, you'll select all those within that grid line. You can go so far into organizing this, but usually the simpler the better, and not having too many layers is also a good thing, because otherwise you're like, where is where? Like I don't have time for this. Okay, and I think that's basically all that I wanted to cover today. So if you guys have any questions, you're free to ask now. Okay, so now there's a lot of you. Does anybody have any questions related to their project? Because you guys are doing a pavilion. Is there anything?
There's some questions in the chat if you notice.
Okay. Okay.
One question is about line type.
Line types.
What's the purpose of a line type?
What is the purpose of a line type? So when you're drawing line types, for example, continuous, dash and added, center lines, identifies something specific. So a center line is identifying identifying where the center of an object is, or a wall, or a span. We have property lines, which are dash dot dot, showing what the extent of the property is. You have your continuous line, which most of your construction is composed of. We have dashed lines, which can either indicate something that's beyond an object that you can't see, or above the plane of a plan, for example, to show overhangs. So it's important to understand what type of line type you need and where it goes so that your drawings are easy to understand and they have a function, basically what I'm saying. Okay, does that answer your question? Whoever asked it?
Teresa, is that good for you?
Yes,
Would,
thank you.
okay. So the question is, would you recommend Revit or Rhino? And this is honestly a preference thing. If you're creating something very amorphous or sinuous or organic, I'd say, then Revit would definitely be easier because, Rhino would be easier for that because Revit uses building components like walls and floors and columns in order to create its models, but Rhino uses objects and elements which you can create through curves and poly surfaces. So there's more freedom in that sense versus Revit is something catered toward the industry because we know we're making walls, we know we're making columns. And so those are the selection that you can choose from. And not to say that you can't manipulate those objects, but it's definitely a lot harder because encoded in these building elements is information that the program uses to analyze. So you can already create your wall types and know what materials are inside the walls, for example, but you won't necessarily be able to make a blob architecture type of project. So it's up to you what you
No,
think is
can I
appropriate.
speak to it? Like
Sure.
I would like to add to what Eric said. So Rhino and Revit, they are very different. They belong to absolutely different class of software. Rhino is a 3D modeler, and as Eric said, it's the tool to experiment with forms and do what architects called mass modeling. So when they're thinking about the shape and proportions and how it will fit the landscape or particular like situation, right? And then you use Rhino because usually it's easier to model just to create a shape and to play with it in a Rhino or another 3D modeler. There are plenty of popular 3D modelers like 3D Max or Cinema 4D, whatever you prefer. In the North America, Rhino is the most common one. And also Rhino it has a tool which is called Grasshopper. It makes it easy to make like repetitive elements and to play with forms. So there are benefits of using Rhino. Revit is a tool to support the whole architectural project, like to create and maintain model for the whole architectural project from the very beginning. Actually, it has tools for mass modeling too, till not only finalizing the project, detailing, finalizing it, but even after that for maintenance of the building. So this tool doesn't give you much design flexibility, and it doesn't benefit your creativity much. That's why for first phase, like very creative, you usually use Rhino or other modeler. But in general, when you start working on the project and developing it, you're working in Revit. I don't think that in your second year studio you will work and you will need Revit much. Probably in winter semester you can try to use it first.
Mm-hmm. So we have another question from Pulomaya.
Hey,
Go
so
ahead.
my question is like it's a housekeeping question. Like just like we got an email for this tutorial, like will we be receiving email for all the future tutorials, not just by you, but like maybe like whatever are there like for V-Ray or Rhino or just the Adobe Suite or something. And also, like you said, you're recording this and you'll put it in like a folder. So will they all be like put in folders that will be shared with us? Because that would be really helpful.
You can answer this.
About where we put it, or
Mm-hmm.
I haven't planned for that yet, so we haven't discussed that yet. I think we will announce it, like we will send out an email announcement, like pointing where we are publishing video recordings of these sessions. They will be all published, so don't worry, you will be able to watch them again and to reference your friends to them. Probably we will send an announcement today or tomorrow.
Okay, we have another question asking where do we get Rhino? So do we get it ourselves? We have the pack.
No, just a moment, just a moment. We suppose so. Here, I think that first, like second year students should be here, and probably some first year students. Both second year students received their Rhino licenses previous year. They paid for them in their auxiliary fees. So, and everybody received an email with their personal Rhino license. So if some of you were in first year and you still are not using your personal Rhino license, email help.arch@ryerson.ca, and we will help you to come into possession of your personal Rhino license, which actually belong, like you already have for 1 year. Okay, if you are in first year, then you like your Rhino license keys will be distributed to you by the end of September. So for now, you can use trial versions.
Okay. And one more, do we have any sources for 3D furniture like 3D SketchUp 3D Warehouse? I'm not too familiar with any. I know Revit City is good for Revit, but in terms of Rhino, I'm not too familiar. Sorry about that.
I'm sure you will find plenty of
Yeah.
resources. Just always be critical. If you're gonna use somebody else's object, test it first. For example, place it in your model, make 100 copies and see how hard it is to manipulate this model with 100 copies. If it's hard, if you see that your model becomes very slow in response, it means that this object is too detailed, and don't use it in your model. It can bring huge complications. Just try to find something lightweight, well designed, well thought, then you're good. So don't use just whatever. Even if you like how it looks, it can bring you into trouble. So be critical to what you use.
Thanks for that, Leo. Are there any other questions? If not, then I think we can conclude this tutorial. I think it was a good first tutorial. And we'll be doing more lessons on definitely more complex concepts and different programs and softwares. I think maybe it'd be useful to have us.
Just a moment, just one thing, guys. You're all like most of you are second year students, I guess, and you have been using Rhino in your first year, right? So if there are particular things you are you would like to know more, or some particular things you bump into regularly and you do not know how to deal with that, email Eric. You see his email, right? Like
Right. I neglect to
in the
change it every
participant.
time.
Yeah, you can email him. You can email help.arch@ryerson.ca, and we will try to integrate answers into our next sessions.